can provide speculation opportunities for funds. Since the beginning of FIS, inconsistent words and actions constantly applying to increase investment quotas while loudly short-selling the stock market have been exploiting the policy uncertainty, instability, and unpredictability of the Chinese stock market to profit. On the other hand, the more complex a system is, the more stable it may be. On May, China's A share market unexpectedly fell % due to an increase in stamp duty. On the same day, the H share market only fell % while the B share market fell more than %. This phenomenon has been referred to by foreign media as the strange phenomenon of Chinese corporate stock prices. For foreign investors, the chaos of China's finance is evident. In addition, China's finance is opening up to the outside world, and in the face of various disturbances from external forces, Hong Kong can play a buffering role to some extent. It can be foreseen that China's finance will be forced to develop greatly in the process of being utilized, and the stability of complex system self-organization. However, the complexity and chaos of the financial field itself not only confuse foreign financial capital, but also the management of China. It can only be a matter of cracking down on the situation and being dragged away by the situation. Fourthly, the Chinese-style social liquidation is the most peaceful. It is common around the world that too much funds need to be liquidated. The law is only expressed differently in different economies. In the classic market economy, the outbreak of financial crises became the main way to evaporate funds and close positions. But it brought about severe economic fluctuations and social unrest. For example, the Asian financial crisis caused many large companies to go bankrupt. In South Korea, people also used their household gold products to help the government overcome difficulties. Under China's special way of settling funds, the administrative liquidation has replaced the severe financial crisis. The management often directly forces project shutdowns in the form of policy directives, causing the chain of huge funds to instantly achieving the effect of cooling and evaporating. During this process, banks with government guarantees played the role of shock absorbers. For example, the T-Bund incident completely wiped out the billion-yuan loans of 6 financial institutions, forcing banks to follow the company and suffer significant losses. From this perspective, the market economy with Chinese characteristics has alienated the classic expression of financial crisis and to some extent ensured the smooth operation of the economy. But this seems to It also weakens the vigilance of relevant parties towards the international financial strategy hidden behind the financial crisis, which began with Soros selling short the Thai currency. From this perspective, it is the openness and complexity of the system, as well as the enormous imagination space of currency value, that objectively determines finance the arrival of civilization's fate. At the same time, the stability brought about by complexity and the calm waves brought by Chinese-style closing positions make Chinese people who are accustomed to gradual and passive correction subjectively unclear and unprepared for this new fate. However, in the middle of the management's balance of the asymmetry that arises in reality, in the spontaneous real practice of the private sector in addition to the stock market, there are also the emergence of private finance such as Guanqi and Zhejiang Fund, which has accelerated the process of financial opening up, gradually separated the real economy from the virtual economy, and formed financial awareness and rules. It can be seen that China is unconsciously entering the door of financial civilization, and the muddled state dragged by reality is expected to continue for a long time, due to a lack of understanding and reflection on the new civilization. The original regulatory methods have still been followed. However, as regulation has been repeatedly falsified, traditional theories and empirical methods have been overturned one by one, and all sectors of society will gradually recognize the situation and understand financial civilization. Why are we slow and fast in dealing with the issues of capital and finance? The subprime mortgage crisis finally made Bernanke uneasy first. He cut the bank rate by basis points, and then the quasi-interest rate has been reduced to 2%. The practical action of saving the market first completely overturned its previously held belief that inflation is the primary goal of monetary policy, in sharp contrast to the rapidity of the rescue action. The U.S. Federal Reserve turned a blind eye to the foam and reacted slowly to the foam in the slow accumulation process of the housing market. Behind this policy's division reflects human alienation. Before taking over the role of the Federal Reserve, Bernanke was a non-foam theorist and also published an academic paper asserting that monetary policy is essentially powerless to foam. While his behavior in the subprime mortgage crisis was undoubtedly self-defeating, also betraying his beliefs is his predecessor Greenspan, who was a disciple of economic liberalism in his college years. But once he took the baton of the Federal Reserve, he immediately changed his face and repeatedly intervened in the operation of the invisible hand with the visible hand of policy. 2 generations of Federal Reserve leaders have a dual personality in their bodies. Looking at the current Chinese economy, there is also a similar phenomenon of slow and rapid growth. On the one hand, in terms of capital, the regulatory response in finance and state-owned enterprises is swift and hasty. Huajin Company, less than 4 years after its establishment, has injected $1 billion into the 4 major state-owned banks. As for the latter's trillion yuan bad debts, they have been quietly wiped out by the central bank and the Ministry of Finance. China Investment Corporation (CIC), which had a lot of activity, started preparing in March and had already smoothly released its investment within 6 months. It even eagerly completed its investment in Blackstone in May as a foreign exchange investment company. Unfortunately, this investment not only failed to make a profit, but also paid tuition fees. It is not surprising that similar situations are also common in areas such as state-owned enterprise reform. On the other hand, there is a slow response in market construction and scientific coordination. The capital market has been open for years and is still a lame duck. The defect of the listing mechanism only of the market value, too few trading varieties, no short selling mechanism, etc. Make the capital market have endure the pain of no intermediate transition space. After years of procrastination on the Chi-Next board, small and medium-sized enterprises that are short of money have waited until the flowers withered. As for antitrust, there are many slogans and few actions. The anti-monopoly law was only introduced after years of deliberation, but punishment is not applicable to officials, which is not detrimental to the increasing trend of administrative monopoly. Objectively speaking, behind this phenomenon of slow and swift dual heaven, there is a change in the weather of reform, which means reform we have shifted from the field of ideology to a strategic layout at the level of interests. During the pro-reform period, the attention of various sectors of society was focused on the basic direction of society, such as whether the reform should be carried out, whether it was capitalist or socialist, etc. This also sparked two major reform debates in the early S and early S. Deng Xiaoping cleverly bypassed these ideological disputes and successfully opened up an era of development through his speeches on three treatises and Southern Expedition. In the post-reform period, reforms were constantly hijacked and internalized by interest groups, and people with rice in their hands began to let their buttocks determine their minds, setting various obstacles at the level of interests. As for the current regulation of capital finance and the rapid efforts of state-owned enterprises and state-owned enterprises, but the slow response to market construction and scientific coordination, this seemingly split phenomenon is the result of the distribution of interests. Take China Investment Corporation as an example. CIC has gathered a group of high-level officials from the Ministry of Finance, Huajin Corporation, the China Banking Regulatory Commission, and the National Development and Reform Commission. It is not difficult to infer from the identities of influential senior officials at the ministerial and deputy levels that CIC has actually concentrated the ideas and interests of a generation. The chairman was originally a reformist expert in the market economy, known as one of the three swordsmen of economic system reform. But later, as the official ladder rose, he became obsessed with the effectiveness of state-owned and administrative monopolies. If it is said that this dual personality of front and back fracture is caused by the buttocks determining the brain, it is probably not too much. The duality of this personality is more evident in another reformist swordsman, the general manager of CIC. As one of the earliest sea turtles to land in China, he returned home from Wall Street in the S with the belly full of Western economics Inc. Similar remarks such as "what we want is a clean market and let the market manage the market" clearly indicates his market-oriented background. Due to his successful initiation of the establishment of the Chinese securities market, he also rose to prominence in his career. Afterwards, he also showed a similar fascination with the hands of the government. In terms of this issue, the leaders in relevant fields between China and the United States essentially belong to the same group of people. In fact, superstitious markets and superstitious state-owned enterprises belong to the same era. Experts and scholars mostly believe in the market, while officials, most people, are superstitious about the state. This generation of experts and scholars has been basically indoctrinated with classic Western economic theories advocating for the magical power of the invisible hand of the market and reducing government intervention. Among these scholars, the most typical is Wu Jinglian, who is C. Wu market, and Gao Gao. Xiqing and others were influenced by it. As for contemporary officials, they always believed in the power of the government, believed in cybernetics, and preferred to concentrate their efforts on major issues, which was also the main source of the lingering Street 8-owned concept. Between these two, those scholarly officials who excel in learning and become officials, who have achieved the transition from being experts and scholars to officials, have experienced a personality split. They are both superstitious about the market and difficult to resist the temptation of state-owned enterprises, towering above the temple and guiding the country. To put it simply, they are using the market to gain benefits and administrative monopolies to profit from competition. In recent years, officials who have parachuted into state-owned banks as bosses have used the name of shareholding and marketization to give rise to the phenomenon of millions of annual salaries, which is just a microcosm of it. As for market efficiency and government efficiency, whether in the entire history of economics or in the middle, who is higher or lower, there has been a long-standing debate in the process of market-oriented reform in China. Putting aside the linear thinking of either this or that, objectively speaking, the key to better and healthier reform lies in having or hedging these two efficiencies. From the perspective of value orientation, relevant departments want to have both market efficiency and government efficiency, and objectively, the great success of the Chinese economy in the past years also depends on the full combination of these two. However, in recent years, the frequency of hedging between the two sides has increased. Whether it is health care reform, housing reform, education reform, public utility reform, resource price reform, etc., it is either too market-oriented or the government's power is too strong, resulting in obvious negative consequences of hedging. The efficiency of the U.S. government is very high, and its glory comes from the combined force of plus generated by the superposition of two efficiencies. But it deceives other countries to give up regulation and only want a market economy. If Chinese reformers listen to their deceit, as long as the market does not want government efficiency, they will undoubtedly be deceived.